this whole motion.
Really? That's very cool. That's very cool.
While the Cornelia Marie also appeared in the Deadliest Catch spin-off Deadliest Catch Bloodline, as of 2023, its whereabouts are unknown. If the Bering Sea is the stage and crabboats are its actors, then Deadliest Catch has always been a play straddled between survival and extreme spectacle. Fans expect to waves near-death misses and the familiar rhythm of steel against ice. They know the dangers of the sea, and it excites them as they watch man versus nature. However, sometimes the most shocking disappearance isn't a man lost overboard. It's when an entire vessel seems to vanish from the screen, when Cornelia Marie, one of the show's most iconic mainstays in her own right, quietly slipped out of sight. Fans got restless, and it hit harder than any rogue wave. Was it ratings, reality, or something hidden below deck that sent the boat into exile? Join us as we reveal the real reason why Cornelia Marie disappeared from Deadliest Catch, long before television cameras captured her icy decks. The Cornelia Marie was already destined for the stormy pages of maritime history. She was built in 1989 inches Louisiana and wasn't intended to be just another crabbo hammered together towhaul pots. Coming in at 128 feet long, she was forged from steel and engineered for durability. A sturdy fortress of the sea. She was named after Cornelia Marie Collins, the wife of the original owner, Ralph Collins. While many boats carried names that faded into obscurity, hers would eventually become iconic, etched into the lore of both the fishing industry and reality television. When Discovery launched Deadliest Catch in 2005, the producers didn't just want a working boat. They wanted vessels with unique personalities. Vessels weren't going to just be background props and air show. They were going to be characters in their own right. Few fit that role better than Cornelia Marie, her distinctive green and white hull cued across the Bering Sea like a whale charging into battle. Every time she appeared on screen, fans knew they'd be treated to a story that was more than just crab holes. It was promised to be human drama playing out on a steel stage. And at the heart of it all stood Captain Phil Harris. Captain Phil, the soul of the Cornelia Marie. Phil Harris wasn't just another skipper barking orders into the wind. He was larger than life with a gruff exterior that could weather a storm and a softer side that won viewers over instantly. His combination of toughness and vulnerability made him one of the most beloved figures on Deadliest Catch. The ice comes down. If it gets to my pots on the edge, it'll just pick them up and drink them. Take them and set them, drop them off at 1,000 fathoms. His leadership on the Cornelia Marie was as unpredictable as the sea itself. He could be tough on his deck hands, demanding perfection when hauling pots in brutal conditions. Yet behind that intensity was a man who deeply cared about his crew and his family. He lived for his sons, Josh and Jake Harris, who frequently appeared alongside him on the boat. Their presence added an extra layer to the show as a generational story about a father trying to pass down both knowledge and legacy in one of the deadliest professions on Earth. For fans, watching him command the Cornelia Marie was as captivating as the towering waves themselves. He embodied the dangerous romance of the sea. Sometimes equal parts chaos, courage, and other times tragedy waiting to unfold. As the seasons rolled on, the Cornelia Marie became more than just another vessel on the show. She was one of its central icons, rivaling the Northwestern, the Time Bandit, and the Wizard. Viewers followed her not just for the action, but for the stories tied to her decks. Phil's leadership style was relatable because it wasn't perfect. He made mistakes, admitted to weaknesses, and showed the human side of a captain's job. In particular, his interactions with Josh and Jake became highlights of the series. Sometimes heartwarming, sometimes tense, but always authentic. By mid-2000, the Cornelia Marie wasn't just a fishing boat, but a household name. Merchandise, fan clubs, and online forums dedicated to the vessel sprang up. Fans felt connected not only to Phil, but to the boat itself. Her green and white paint scheme became symbolic, an emblem of endurance and family legacy. Unfortunately, in the brutal world of crab fishing, fortune is never permanent. The tides were about to turn, and what happened next would change the course of the Cornelia Marie forever, the tragedy that changed everything. The turning point came during Season 6 of Deadliest Catch. On the 29th of January, 2010, while the Cornelia Marie Weso floating crab at St. Paul Island, disaster struck. Captain Phil Harris suffered a massive stroke. Cameras were rolling, and what unfolded was one of the most heartbreaking arcs ever broadcast in reality television. He was airlifted for medical care, and for days fans followed updates with bated breath and tension coursing through their veins. There was hope because everyone knew that he was a fighter. But the sea had claimed too much from him already. On the 9th of February, at just 53 years old, Phil Harris passed away. The news hit fans like a rogue wave. For many, it felt like losing a family member. And for Cornelia Marie, it marked the beginning of her most uncertain chapter, tragic turn in Season 6 when Captain Harris suddenly passed away from intracranial hemorrhage. The man who had defined her identity was gone, and no one knew whether she could continue without him. Phil's death left a gaping hole not just in the show, but in the Harris family and the crew who had sailed under him. For Josh and Jake, the loss was both deeply personal and crushingly public. Millions of viewers mourned alongside them, but mourning did keep the lights on or the boat searthy. Cornelia Marie suddenly found herself at a crossroads. The debate revolved around who would lead her and shoulder the financial and operational responsibilities that came with keeping such a large vessel at sea. For those not in the know, the ownership of the boat was complicated. It didn't solely belong to the Harris family. Multiple stakeholders had a say in her fate, and without Phil at the helm, those disputes grew louder. Still, the boat pushed forward. Josh Harris, though young and inexperienced compared to his father, was determined to keep the legacy alive. Jake, meanwhile, struggled with personal issues that would later pull him away from the spotlight. The result was a Cornelia Marie caught in limbo, sometimes fishing when she could, other times struggling when she couldn't, and never quite reclaiming the stability she had under Phil. While the world mourned Phil Harris, the producers of Deadliest Catch faced their own dilemma. Cornelia Marie had always been one of the show's censors. But without his commanding presence, could she still be trusted to deliver the same quality of entertainment with her new captain? The hard truth was the Deadliest Catch was more than a documentary. It was also a big business. Boats weren't guaranteed screen time. They had to earn it by providing both drama and dependability. If a vessel wasn't seaworthy, if a crew wasn't compelling, or if a captain couldn't hold the narrative, Discovery could and would choose to focus elsewhere. And they did. For Cornelia Marie, that meant her very survival on screen would depend on more than history. She would need to prove she still belonged in the deadly televised theater of the Bering Sea. The tragedy of Phil's passing was only the beginning. At the time, Josh was in his mid-20s. He had experience on deck, but not the years of leadership that build a captain's reputation. Jake, meanwhile, was already battling personal demons that would make consistency on board a challenge. For fans, the sight of Phil's sons trying to step into his role was both heart-wrenching and inspiring. They wanted to believe Cornelia Marie could go on and that the boat could survive tragedy the way so many crabbers had survived towering waves. The first major challenge wasn't even about fishing. It was about money and paperwork. As mentioned earlier, Cornelia Marie wasn't owned outright by the Harris family. In fact, Cornelia Marie Collins herself, the namesake of the boat, retained significant ownership alongside other stakeholders. That meant every decision about maintenance, upgrades, or whether the boat would even head out for the crab season had to be made collectively. Without Phil at the helm to unify everyone, disputes became more complicated. The Harris brothers, beloved as they were, simply didn't have the same leverage their father once had. Boats like the Cornelia Marie require constant investment. Engines need overhauls. Safety inspections need passing, and gear wears down after every brutal season. Without steady cash flow and strong leadership, it's easy for a vessel to fall behind. And falling behind in the crab industry means risking your license, your crew, and your reputation. This is where Cornelia Marie began to stumble. Operating a crabboat in the Bering Sea is brutally expensive. Annual maintenance alone can run into hundreds of thousands of dollars. If a vessel isn't fishing or IFR catch quotas are reduced by any chance, the money simply isn't there to cover those costs. After Phil's passing, Cornelia Marie needed major work to remain compliant with Coast Guard regulations. There were rumors of failing inspections, mechanical issues, and a lack of the kind of investment other boats on the show enjoyed. Fans often underestimate just how financially fragile even famous vessels can be. Fumito sent fix busted engines. As months turned into years, she found herself slipping into cycles of repairs, partial fishing seasons, and uncertainty. Each time, Josh Harris pushed to keep the boat alive. But it often meant scrambling for funds, juggling ownership disputes, and pleading her case to Discovery producers who were less inclined to feature a vessel that couldn't guarantee a season's worth of action. Behind the scenes, the producers of Deadliest Catch were facing their own hard reality. The show thrived on consistency and drama. Each season, Discovery wanted to follow boats that were not only seaworthy, but also rich in personality. For years, Cornelia Marie had provided both. Phil Harris was television gold with his authentic, gritty, vulnerable, and compelling persona. With him gone, Discovery executives had to ask themselves if Josh would carry the legacy on. Would audiences tune in for the younger Harris brothers in the same way they had for their father? It was a brutal calculation. While the fan base clearly adored Cornelia Marie, television is a business first. If a boat didn't deliver ratings, it risked being sidelined. In the immediate aftermath of Phil's death, Discovery did continue to feature Cornelia Marie, largely because viewers were desperate to see what would happen next. Josh and Jake's journey carried emotional weight, and producers gave them room to step into leadership roles. Eventually, the cracks soon showed. Without a steady captain, the crew often felt adrift. Storylines involving the ship began to center more on struggle and less on triumph. Some fans embraced this realism, but others found it harder to watch. The emotional core that her true captain had once provided was missing, and no amount of editing could replace it. When Jake Harris's personal troubles escalated, leading him eventually off the show entirely, the narrative became even more fragile. Josh was left holding not just the wheel of the Cornelia Marie, but also the expectations of millions of fans, the weight of his father's legacy, and the financial burdens of keeping the boat afloat. And it was ultimately too much for one man to carry alone. As the years passed, Cornelia Marie's struggles off-camera began to seep into fan speculation. Some wondered why she wasn't appearing as much on the show, while other boats, like the Northwesterner the Time Bandit, remained consistent features. The answer often came down to timing and logistics. If the boat wasn't fishing a full season, Discovery had little incentive to feature her. Crews had to be reliable. Storylines had to unfold naturally, and production schedules had to line up for a vessel struggling financially and organizationally. That was easier said than done. Rumors circulated among the fan base that Cornelia Marie was on the verge of being sold. People wondered if Discovery had cut ties for good. Through all the turbulence, one thing became clear, and that was Josh Harris was determined not to let his father's legacy sink. Time and again, he stepped up to fight for his ship. Whether it was seeking outside investors, pushing through repairs, or negotiating with Discovery, Josh refused to give up on the vessel that bore his family's name. This moved the longtime fans. The Deadliest Catch fan favorites is Naghost ship, but it seems that its days in the spotlight might be over for good. They saw in Josh the echoes of Phil's stubborn resilience. Even if he wasn't the hardened, seasoned captain his father had been, his loyalty to Cornelia Marie was undeniable. But determination alone couldn't shield the boat from the realities of business and television. As Discovery's priorities shifted and the crab industry itself faced new challenges, the Cornelia Marie found herself increasingly vulnerable. And that's when the decline became irreversible, the slow fade from screen and final fate. Eventually, as time continued to flow, fans had begun to notice what producers already knew. Cornelia Marie was fading from Deadliest Catch. Episodes that once centered on her were fewer and farther between. Seasons came and went, and she was absent altogether. For casual viewers, it was almost as if she'd been erased. For die-hard fans, it was a glaring omission, something like telling a story with one of its main characters missing. The reality, however, was more complicated. We're going to haul right into the wind-up to the northeast. The boat hadn't vanished into the sea. She was still fishing, still trying to claw her way back to stability. But for Discovery, the risk of dedicating airtime to a vessel that couldn't promise consistency was too great. In other words, Cornelia Marie wasn't gone, she was simply sidelined. If Discovery thought fans wouldn't notice, they